Today I want to talk about walking and fat loss and why I think walking should be the cornerstone of any fat loss program you follow. So there's three things with fat loss. That is calories in, calories out, and hunger slash appetite. Oops. Appetite. Okay. So how does walking affect all three of these things? And we know in order to lose body fat, you have to be in a calorie deficit. So either your calories in has to be less than your calories out, and or your calories out has to be more than your calories in. It's essentially the same thing, creating an energy deficit, but the way in which you create that deficit is completely up to you. So with walking, how does walking affect the calories in? And in order to figure that out, or better understand that, I would say, we have to actually skip to the third one, which is going to be appetite and hunger. I want to redo that. There we go. So how does walking affect your appetite and hunger? Luckily, walking is a form of cardio. It's zone 1 cardio. Luckily, walking doesn't affect your hunger in a negative way. In fact, I would say anecdotally, walking affects my hunger and appetite in a positive way. Meaning, if this is me before a walk, and this is me after a walk, and let's say this is about a 2-hour gap in between these two versions of myself, I guess. And let's say before my walk, my hunger is 6 out of 10. So I'm not starving, but I could definitely eat. After the walk, most of the time, again, this is anecdotal right now, most of the time, my hunger is a little less. So I would say when I come back 2 hours after my walk, my hunger is a 4 out of 10. Let me see if I can. Yep, just want to move this to the side, the mouse, just so that's not blocking. So walking positively has affected my hunger because hunger is going to be the primary I guess you could say, when it comes to fat loss, right? You get the urge to eat, you get hungry, your appetite is high, you're more likely to snack, you're more likely to eat more, which means that you are probably not in a calorie deficit, or that is what makes staying in a calorie deficit harder, right? The hungrier you are, the more unlikely you are to stay in a calorie deficit. So if you find ways to suppress your hunger, which for example is why people might drink coffee, then you are more likely not to eat. Therefore, you are more likely to stay in a calorie deficit. Therefore, you are more likely to adhere to your fat loss program and actually lose the weight over time. So walking as an appetite suppressant is a big win. So I don't know if you heard that. That's an alarm keeps going off in my hallway. So if you end up hearing that, I apologize. But because walking positively affects your appetite, it suppresses your appetite, which means it blunts your hunger far after you've completed your walk, right? 2 hours after, as compared to running, for example, right? I don't know if you've ever gone on a long run or even a shorter run. Later on in the evening, a few hours after your run, you are ravenous. You tend to be very, very hungry. That's because running or a higher intensity cardio activity exponentially increases your hunger, increases your appetite, which makes staying in a deficit much harder. That's often why you'll see people who are training for marathons or races like a 10K or something like that, they struggle to even lose weight on their training program because it's so easy to eat back those calories when your appetite has increased without you consciously realizing it or being prepared for it. So because, again, back to this here, because walking positively, again, affects your appetite, right? It blunts your appetite. So let me change that here because sorry, this is my first time using this here. It positively affects your appetite. Put the green one for positively affects your appetite, meaning it suppresses your appetite. It positively also affects the calories in, right? Because you are less likely to consume or overconsume, there we go, overconsume calories because you are not hungry. Does that make sense? So walking inadvertently positively affects your likelihood to consume or overconsume calories, which would destroy the deficit that you've created by whichever means. Now, how does walking affect the calories out? It positively, it should be obvious, affects the calories out as well, because when you're walking, you are burning additional calories, right? So usually for my walks, I usually take at least one 45-minute walk to an hour walk in the morning, and I usually burn, let's say 300 calories on average, depending how quickly I'm walking. So if you're taking me, for example, I'm in 60 minutes, I'm burning 300 calories, but also I'm suppressing my hunger, so I am not going to consume more calories here as well, right? I'm not increasing the calories in. So in a weird way, I'm increasing the deficit by moving my body, but I'm also increasing the deficit, or at least sustaining the deficit that I've already created by whichever means, by not consuming more calories because my appetite is regulated. This whole thing is why walking is the cornerstone, like I said, for every fat loss program I write for myself or I create for clients, because it's a win-win scenario, and that's so rare when it comes to anything fitness related or fat loss related. You are burning more calories actively while you're walking, but you are also blunting your hunger, suppressing your appetite, regulating your appetite, however you want to frame it, so that you are not consuming more calories on the back end, which is usually what people run into when they increase their activity, whether it's through strength training or running or cycling or playing sports. Usually they end up consuming those calories back that they burned because their appetite is not regulated. Their appetite spikes, which makes it hard to stay in a deficit. So appetite spikes when you're running or strength training or cycling or playing other sports. Usually your appetite is spiked, I guess you could say. Again, now for something that is not anecdotal via my experience with myself or with my clients, it's a study that I read a while ago, and I'll link it in this description below. But it's this idea of taking a high energy flux approach to fat loss. What does that mean? A high energy flux approach to fat loss, or let's discuss what a low energy flux approach to fat loss is, and that's the approach most people take. So low energy flux, that means low calorie intake paired with low energy, let me put energy expenditure, right? So what does this look like? I would say for the average person, this means you're eating, this is a sedentary person. So the average person in America is sedentary, probably hitting 4,000 steps per day, maybe going to the gym 3 times a week, let's say even 4 times a week, which is honestly above average, but let's just say this person is going to the gym 4 times a week, getting 4,000 steps a day. And as a result, because their daily energy expenditure is low on average, their calorie intake has to be lower than that in order to lose body fat, because they have to be in an energy deficit. This is the approach the average person takes, and that's why most people feel like they're not eating much when they're losing body fat, and it's because they aren't, right? Their TDEE, oops, I already had switched to green. Their TDEE is low, right? Low energy expender, low TDEE. Because their TDEE is low, everything has to be low. Their deficit, the calories they eat in the deficit has to be low because their energy expenditure is low, so they're taking a low energy flux approach. Now, of course, I'm sure you guessed it, a high energy flux approach, let's drag this down. High energy flux approach is just the opposite of that. So high energy flux. So high calorie intake, high energy expenditure, and high TDEE, right? So everything is flipped. You are burning more calories throughout the day. You're probably getting 10 or 12,000 steps per day, which means that even in a deficit, you're able to eat more. So let's say we are talking about the same person here, and in a deficit, person A has to eat, well, it's the same person. So version A of person 1, it has to eat 1,800 calories in order to be in a deficit. Version B of person 1 might be able to eat 2,200 calories, or even if you want to be modest, 2,100 calories, while also still being in the same, let's say, 500 calorie deficit. Which person would you rather be? I would rather be version B rather than version A, because I'm able to consume more, which there's so many other physiological benefits to be able to actually consume more still while in a deficit, and then you're getting the additional physiological benefits of moving your body more, right? So again, this person might be walking 12,000 steps a day, while this person is probably walking 4, because on average, American is walking 4,000 steps per day. This is high and low energy flux. Now, what about the study that I mentioned earlier? Let's move this down. So the study that I mentioned earlier actually says that people who take a high energy flux approach are more likely to sustain fat loss. These people are more likely to keep the weight off than the people who take a low energy flux approach. And when I read this, it literally blew my mind, because it basically told me that, and confirmed to me, that the vast majority of people who lose weight are going to gain it back. And this is why. It's not because those people didn't count their calories. It's not because they didn't strength train properly. It's simply because their fundamental approach to fat loss of thinking just, it's a calorie deficit, eat less, eat less, eat less, that understanding is flawed. It's the people who actually eat less and move more who are more likely to sustain their fat loss efforts. Like I said, that literally changed everything for me. It blew my mind. And we bring this back to walking. Why? Because walking is the simplest, most accessible way you can move more. It's the simplest, most accessible way that you can enter a high energy flux state, that you can take this approach without doing anything crazy, without spiking your appetite, which makes fat loss exponentially harder. all you have to do is increase your daily steps. And this is how I like to break it down for clients. We're going to move this down again so you can see this a little better. Is if you are at 4K, if you are at 4,000 steps per day, I just want you to get to 8. Not just, it's going to take some effort, it's going to take some strategy. You're not just going to be able to, like, you know, willy-nilly, okay, well, I'm somehow going to get 8,000 steps per day. Get a fitness tracker, whether it's an Apple Watch, a Fitbit, carry your phone everywhere. If you have an iPhone, there's a pedometer on there. It's not super accurate, but it works just fine. Nothing has to be perfect here. But get to 8,000 steps per day. This would probably look like you adding a 20 to 25 minute walk to get from 4 to 8,000. You'll probably get to 9,000 with a 25-minute walk if you're walking at a pretty average pace. Now, depending on your fat loss goal, if you want to get leaner, obviously, you know, everything I'm going to say here is if you want to get leaner, just increase your steps. It makes a huge difference. But when I'm trying to get really lean, like if I'm already, as a woman, sub 20% body fat, and I kind of want to get lean for the summer, for a party, whatever, it doesn't really matter what your reason is. If you want to get leaner, I would say aim for 12 to 15K. It is a lot. I know that. You're going to have to schedule your walks, probably 2 walks per day at 45 minutes, or if you can, you know, can break down 90 minutes however you want to, but that's approximately 90 minutes of walking per day in addition to whatever steps you get, you know, in your office or at home or walking your dog or whatever it is. But this is if you want to get really lean. But if you're just trying to lose weight in general, this right here is going to make the biggest difference. And then from 8K to 12K, and I would say, this is probably the most sustainable. And just to be transparent, when I'm thinking about steps, I'm thinking about a daily average. It doesn't have to be you exactly getting 8K every day. Some days you can get 6K, other days you might get 10K, and then throughout the week that should average out to 8K. So, to wrap up this video, because it's already longer than I anticipated it or expected it to be, walking should be the cornerstone of your fat loss program. If you are not including walking or counting that as a way to burn extra calories, I'm going to need you to, because it's going to push you in this high energy flux state. And this is what wins. This is going to make it so you actually sustain your fat loss, because that's what it's all for. You want to lose the weight once. You don't want to keep losing and gaining the same weight over and over again, year after year. It's a waste of time, effort, bandwidth. You want to lose the 20, 30, 40 pounds one time and never gain it back again. And instilling this as a habit, instilling walking as a habit is going to do that for you. There's so many other benefits to walking that I'm not going to get into here again, because I said this video is way too long. But if you want to lose weight, start walking. All right, I'm going to end this here. I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.